bit, but I'm not very good at it. I got a friend to set up Visual Studio Code so that it automatically did everything. All I had to do was push buttons.
Is it just to like get files off the internet and make downloads and set things up? Or
yeah, so there's yeah. So anyone else? We'll circle back to that.
It's I think isn't it mainly for version control?
Yeah. So what is version control?
Well, basically keeping your source code in order, and having, I guess, can help to have backups of previous versions of source code and releases and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, has anyone ever written a paper for a class and you start writing and you have draft 1, and then you change a couple things and you don't want to lose what you have because maybe there's a paragraph in there that you like, but you made some other changes. So you save another copy and it's called draft 2. And then you think you're done, and so you save, final. And then you make some other changes, and then you have final. And by the time you're actually done, you have 10 different copies of the file. So that's annoying, but not a total disaster when you only have one file and it's just you. But when you have thousands of files and maybe dozens of developers working on the project, you can't have 30 different versions of the same thing. Just doesn't work. So what Git allows you to do is basically have one like current snapshot of the code base. It's kind of like it's the official thing right now, right? It's the version that we're all using, and then when you want to change it, you can kind of in a sense temporarily copy over whatever is the current state of that application, make your changes, and then you'll actually get a history of all the changes. So instead of having 30, a million different copies of files, you just have one copy of the file, but embedded in that copy is a history of all of your other save points. So that might sound abstract, and it is. Git is not an intuitive thing, but the basics of using it are not too bad. It might take a couple days to get used to, but again, kind of like the command line, where you can just go all out and there's all kinds of crazy things you can do with it, but we really only need, we just need to do a few simple things. And it's the same is true with Git. It can be very complicated, but at its core, we just need to do a couple things. And we use it to make sure that we can save our project at different points without proliferating different copies of files and folders. So that's Git. Git is just something on your local machine, right? So we installed Git with Homebrew yesterday. And so Git is just, a program we have on our local machines. The real payoff of what Git does is that it allows you to have a whole team of people all working on the same code base, but in kind of a decentralized manner. The issue is you have all these different people using Git on a local machine, but how do you coordinate that? So GitHub is one way that you can do that. There are a lot of other similar competitors to GitHub. There's GitLab and Bitbucket and other stuff like that. But GitHub is basically just a way to store your code online somewhere, so everyone can access it and make changes to it and so on. So all GitHub is basically just cloud storage for your code. And there's some other functionality that GitHub gives us, but that's basically it. So what you'll end up doing is you have some code on GitHub, right? Like a bunch of files, and you'll what's called clone that down. So you'll ask for all those files, and you'll copy those files down to your local machine. Then you'll have a copy of that, and then you can make your own changes. And then once you make those changes, you can push it back up into that central repository. And then other people will be able to do the same thing, right? So there's still just one kind of master or central copy of all the code, but lots of people can work on it simultaneously. So again, this explanation may not be all that enlightening if you've never seen it or used it before. So we're gonna see a couple examples of just Git first on the local machine. I'll walk you through the process for using Git on local machine, and then we'll also do an example using GitHub. And then after that, hopefully this will take no more than half an hour. After that, we will do an exercise individually, and then we'll pair off, and we'll do a pair exercise using Git. All right. I promise you I'm not going to use Vim. I'll use VS Code. So here we are. I'm in this directory that I want to work out of. So I'm gonna start a project. So I want to create a directory. So mkdir, and then my project, and I'll cd into my project. There's nothing there, and I'll open this in code, VS Code. All right, let me magnify this. So in VS Code, and VS Code also has a built-in terminal, which is frankly the main terminal you're going to be using. You can open it. The shortcut is Control tilde. Actually, I've forgotten what the non-shortcut version is, the non-shortcut way of opening it. But Control tilde, you can open it and close it with Control tilde. So
the menu bar has a terminal drop down.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. New terminals. So, and this terminal will work the same. I can do hi, say hi to myself. So I have this terminal. So now what I want to do is I want to create a file. So in VS Code, we could do touch. We could create it on the command line, and that's fine. You can also use the GUI. So if we go here on the left, this is going to contain all of our projects, files, and folders. And just a quick note here, notice that there's nothing here. So don't just open VS Code from your desktop or like some random place in your file system, because otherwise everything will show up here and it just becomes pretty difficult to manage. So make sure you go to the specific place that you want to be working from. So here we're going to create a file. So I'm going to click here. This is create a file, and then this one is to create a folder. I'm going to create a file called my text, and I'll just write some text here. I save that. And then maybe I realize, oh no, okay, I want to capitalize this. So maybe I can capitalize this here, but then maybe I want to also keep my original changes in case I want to go back. So maybe I copy this into another folder, right? So we have this basic problem where we want to kind of preserve the history of our editing, but we don't want to have a million different files. So we use Git, and the way you start using Git is Git Init. So Git is the command, and then we'll use init. So init will initialize a Git repository. So now this folder that I'm in is a Git repository now. It just became a Git repository. And VS Code knows how to handle Git repositories. Notice some things kind of changed up here. This we won't worry too much about how VS Code handles this, but just notice that things are different now over here. So I get feedback from the command line telling me that I've initialized a Git repository. And if I do ls, everything looks the same. But if I do ls-la, I have this new hidden folder called .git. So when I ran this command git init, Git created a folder with a whole bunch of stuff in it. And that's essentially it. It created some folders and some files. And we can actually take a look, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but you'll never need to actually do this, probably. But you can cd into this Git folder, and you can see there's all kinds of stuff. There's some files, and then some folders. Let's cd into refs. And then there's another couple of folders, so cd heads. Okay, there's nothing in heads. So I mean, again, this may not be meaningful in terms of learning about Git, but it's just files and folders like everything else. So if I want to just jump back one directory, I could do .. If I want to jump back several directories just in one go, I can do something like this. So .. // .. And then I'm back in my project. Okay. Now, so I've created this Git project, but I haven't done anything else with it. But there's a few commands that we're going to need to run over and over and over again. You're going to see. The first one is Git Status. So Git Status will tell you the status of your Git repository. So Git Status, we get some output. It says I'm on branch master. We'll talk about that in a second. No commits yet. Again, we'll talk about commits in a second. Some untracked files. So we'll talk about all this in a second, but these are all things that are important to Git. So Git cares about branches, it cares about commits, and it cares about tracked files or adding things into this staging area. Okay. So far, I've just created a Git repository. It's not really doing anything for me at the moment. So in order to start using it, what I need to do is kind of take the current state of my project, which in this case is just one file. But I take the current state of that and I tell Git, hey, I want you to save. I want to create a save point here. And the way you create a save point is by using commit. But before you commit, you have to tell Git exactly what you want to be included in that save. So after I run Git Status, I can see that Git knows that I have a new file here, but Git doesn't really know anything about it yet. It just knows that it kind of doesn't know anything about it. So that's why it's showing up here in red. So we can tell Git to start tracking this file, basically to start being aware of this file by using the command add. So git add. And then we can give it the specific file, or again, we can use dot, which means everything in my current working directory, right? So first we'll do my text. And again, I get no feedback, which means that whatever I did just worked. So if I run Git Status again, this is now green. So this is staged. This file is staged, or it's kind of in this intermediate realm where Git knows about it now. And then if I want to create a save point here, then this file or this version of the file will be saved. Okay, so after I add my file, I need to make a commit. I do that with Git Commit, and a commit is just a save point. So Git Commit, and then I have to give it a flag, which is -m, and then I can type in a message. So commits are always going to have messages, and this is so that you and the other people on your team will know why you made this change. So it's just a way of quickly looking at, we have this huge code base, and I made a small change here. I don't want to look through the whole thing to see what's going on. So you write a message that says, change the font of this button or whatever. Here we'll do something like, oftentimes your initial commit will just be something like that, initial commit. Usually you're going to want to have something that actually explains what you're doing, but this is fine for now.
What was the -m for again?
It's so you can give it a message. I believe -m stands for message. And we can see that now we have a commit. So Git Status. So it says that I'm on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So once I made that commit, my command prompt also changed. And it changed because of the customization that we added to the bash profile. So now, this master is the default branch that Git starts with. So everything you do by default will be on the master branch. You can create your own branches, which we'll see in a second. But master branch is usually the, it's like the official version of the project right now. That's what master means. All right. So at this point, we can also see the history of our commits by using Git Log. So Git Status is a good command to run frequently. These introspection commands are Git Status, Git Log. We'll also show you some stuff. So I only have one commit, but this will show you all of the commits that you've made. So I have this commit, I get this long hash, which is, we won't go into it, but it's just how Git takes everything about your code and turns it into this unique identifier. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna make an edit. We're gonna make an edit and we're gonna save it. So I'm gonna add capital letter and a dot, and I'm gonna save it. So notice that VS Code has reacted. Again, this is just VS Code, so it may be helpful or not, but we do Git Status. You can see that we have changes that Git is not aware of. So we have changes that aren't staged yet. So Git knows that this file has changed, and we haven't really told Git that we want it to start paying attention to that. So we can do that by adding the file. We add the file to the staging area. So Git add, and this time I'll just do dot. So that would, if we had 30 files, it would add all the files here. If I do Git Status again, I can see that this file and its current state has been added to the staging area. So now it's ready to be saved. It's ready to be committed. So we want to create another save point. we do Git Commit -m. This time we'll just say something like that. So a message that explains what we did. So now I've committed this. So now if I do Git Status, you can see that I'm on the master branch and that there are no additional changes that Git is unaware of. So the state of this application now is this. So let's do Git Log and take a look and look at our save points, our commits. Git Log. You can see that now we have 2 commits, right? We have this commit, which is the most recent one, the one we just did. And here's the commit message. That's why it's helpful to have a commit message that's meaningful, because this doesn't tell you very much. And we have this, our initial commit here at the bottom. So we won't go into like, reverting to a previous commit, but that's also possible. And there's actually a lot of ways you can do that. Git can get very complex, but the basic workflow is here. So even though currently, this has a capital, starts with a capital, ends with a period, this earlier version is still saved. It's still saved somewhere. So we can go back and access an earlier state of our application. So that's the real benefit of Git. Instead of having 2 files, having to save 2 separate files, one with like version 1, one version 2, we have one project or one file, and Git handles it does all of its Git magic under the hood and allows us to create these different save points. Are there any questions about that so far? So if I would say that if this seems like very bizarre and unintuitive, then that's fine, and we'll see this over and over again, so it will become something that you can do without thinking about it. Has anyone used, a couple of people said they had used Git a little bit.
Yeah, I'd used it through Visual Studio and GitHub, so I never did like command line stuff with it.
Well, shouldn't be that much. That the basics are the same, and you can do stuff in Visual Studio Code, but we'll discourage that initially.
I used it like with GitHub, but not with like you just did it on Visual Studio Code, putting the commands in the terminal.
Yeah. So this is what Git, this is what Git really is. It's a tool, and you can of course wrap a GUI around it to make it easier to use.
But Chad, all of this is local right now from what you've shown so far, right?
Correct. So this is Git, not GitHub. This is all Git. So GitHub doesn't know anything about any of this stuff. This is only on my machine.
And is it saving like within the my text.txt file somehow, or is there like a separate?
It's saving it inside all of the magic Git stuff. So there's all the way Git, I don't understand the details of how it actually does what it does, but Git does a whole bunch of magic under the hood.
It's a timeline. Think of Git, your master branch, as like your main timeline of events that have happened ever. Every commit is an event that has happened on that timeline, and Git Also, I can't explain to you in depth how Git works, but I can say that it stores the difference of your last commit. So like you start from an initial point and every commit is a difference in that file. So it just remembers the difference of where it has been before. So it remembers the timeline and it can move across that timeline however it wants by commit IDs, which is what I think that's what you're looking at right there is the commit hash IDs. So it uses those as a reference point to navigate around. It does all the magic. You don't have to remember how to do all that, but
yeah, I believe the actual contents of the file are in these other folders that it creates that have this stuff. So it's all just hashes. So in order to save space, Git doesn't save two separate copies, right? It doesn't save like we would do or like I would do. It just saves that initial thing, and then the next save is just the difference between the previous version and the current version. But yeah, you don't need to. I mean, yeah, you can really get into the weeds. I mean, if you're into it, please, by all means. It's a little above my pay grade, though, to be honest.
I think it's kind of like, do they use this for like blockchain and stuff like that when they're doing their hashes and algorithms, and then they'll compile it, and then it gets better over time by some developer compiles it to another? Is that what the Git is?
So SHAs and like commit, like hashes are very, hashes are everywhere in software. So this particular hash, I think, is SHA-1. So the basic idea of a hash is you want to take, a thing, like the thing that I'm actually interested in, let's say a word, and I want to turn it into a unique string that's not like backwards derivable. So I shouldn't be able to start from this and then figure out, oh, this means text. So I mean that's the basic principle of a hash. As far as that, yeah, again, I don't know anything about blockchain.
Sounds like a transaction kind of thing, because that's what they do to deliver, like, this cryptocurrency, and then they'll have this type of address like that, and then it goes to another transaction, and it has all these numbers and letters.
oh, you're talking about wallet IDs.
Yeah, the wallet IDs, yes, right.
Yeah. So cryptocurrency, they use wallet IDs. It's a very, very unique number to a person, and you can create a lot of them. You can create so many different unique wallet IDs, but they use that to identify a specific account. So it's kind of like, I can't use your name because somebody else in the world might have your name. So they assign like a wallet ID, and it's a form of a hash. I can't remember which version. Gosh, I can't remember what version off the top. I'm not even gonna guess because it's really long.
Right.
But it's a very unique ID, and they use that to identify a wallet so they can transfer money to people and make sure they get the right person. But yeah, it's a super long, unique ID.
Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Okay, and okay, so far this is Git on the local machine. So I want to hopefully in the next 10 minutes show what that looks like on GitHub. So I'm actually going to go to the challenge for today. So we have two challenges for today. One is this. So I want to show you the basic process that we use. So there's Git, which is what we did, which is like the core of what Git is. And then there's GitHub, which adds some additional features on top of Git. So here's what we're going to be doing basically every day. We're going to be doing challenges. So you're going to go to the challenge, which in this case is called Git Poetry. And what you're going to do is you're going to fork this repository. So forking is a GitHub thing. It's not a part of Git as such. It's a GitHub thing, but we're going to fork this repo. So you'll click here to fork it. And what forking is going to do is your personal GitHub account. It's basically going to copy over all of this as though you created this. in your account. So we'll fork it. So I'm going to fork it to my personal account. So this will take a few seconds. And now you see that it's mine. It's not PT Bravo Platoon / Git Poetry. It's Chad Mowbray / Git Poetry. So now it's as though, you know, I made this repository in my own personal GitHub account. So we forked it, and then once we fork it, it's still, you know, out there on, you know, on the cloud. It's out there. It's not on a local machine yet. So we want to do, first off, let me go ahead and delete this. Close this. Okay, so what we want to do is now we want to get this project, this Git Poetry project, and we want to get it down on our local machine. We want to copy on our local machine. So I can go into here, code, click on code, and I can copy this address, which is just the URL here .git basically. I go to my command line, and wherever I want to start working, I'll go there. So I'll just, let me create a directory. So I'm in this new directory, and I'm going to do a command called Git Clone. So Git Clone will allow me to pull down a remote repository onto my local machine. So Git Clone, and then I'm going to paste in that address that I got, which is just the URL plus .git. So again, I got that from here. I forked it first. I forked it from PT Bravo Platoon's repository. I forked it into my repository. I go here to code. I copy this URL, and then I run the command git clone and then paste that there. I'll hit enter. I'll get some feedback. And now if I do ls, I have a folder there. So I'm going to cd into that folder. And notice that it automatically tells me that I'm on master branch, which tells me that I'm in a Git repository. So I'm going to open this in VS Code. Code dot. I'll open the command line, or the terminal with control tilde. And you know, I prefer looking at the README here. So basically, this is just saying you can look at this later, but here's just a file, and you can add some stuff to it, and then save it. And then notice all the Git features of VS Code start acting up. So let's do Git Status. Okay, so Git knows that there's been a change, but you haven't told it to start paying attention to it. You haven't told it to start tracking it. So let's track that change. Git add, we'll add everything here. Git status. Okay, so now this is ready. So if I'm happy with this, okay, this is how I want it to be. I'm good. I'm ready to create a save point. Now I will make a commit. So Git commit added fourth line. And I'll do Git status again. You can see that I'm on the master branch. I'm ahead of origin master. So that means that I've made changes locally that aren't reflected in where I originally got this from on the GitHub repo. So that's fine. So now now my local state of affairs, my local state of affairs is different than what's up here in this GitHub repo, right? I've made a change locally and I've made a commit, but still this repo here doesn't know anything about that. So what I want to do here is update this remote repository. I want to update what's on GitHub to reflect what I have locally. So you do that by running this command, git push origin, and then the branch that you want to push to. In this case, we haven't added any branches, so we'll just use master. So git push origin master. Hit enter. It'll do its git thing. The first time you do it, it may ask you for your password. I'm not sure. And then once I do that, I'll refresh the page here on GitHub. And now you can see that this has changed. Right? So this commit here, I can see that, so the commit message, right? It shows up here on GitHub, added 4th line, and it's on this file. So this file was changed by this commit. So if I go here and take a look, I can see that my change exists on this remote repository now. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, what we've done is we forked the PT Bravo Platoon Git Poetry repo. We forked it into our account, our GitHub account. So now it's Chad Mowbray / Git Poetry. Then what I did is I clone it. So I copy this. I run Git Clone and then paste in the URL. So Git Clone, paste in the URL. That gives me a local folder. And then I open that folder in VS Code or Vim, whatever you prefer. And then I make changes to it. And once I make those changes, I run through that local Git process of I add it to the staging area, I commit, and then once I'm satisfied and I want to update that remote repository that's on GitHub, I do git push origin master. So git push origin master, that will basically update what's on GitHub. Okay, so we're almost done. There's one last final step for submitting assignments. So if you're just working on your own repository, that's the workflow. But in order to submit, so if you were, instead of just working on your own repository, if you wanted to, let's say, add code to an open source project, you would need to submit what's called a pull request. And that's what you guys are going to be doing when you complete these challenges. You're going to submit a pull request. So once you have your GitHub repository, the way you want it, it reflects the current state of your local Git repository. You'll go into this tab here called pull requests. Right here, pull requests. And then you'll new pull request. You'll create a new pull request. And you don't need to worry about all this stuff, but you'll get shown the whatever differences between what you've done and the original file. And here we're saying basically, I want to update the original PT Bravo Platoon Git Poetry repository with the changes that are in my version of the Git Poetry repo. We're not actually going to change it, but this is what we're going to do. So then you just do create pull request. And then if you want to leave a additional comment here, that's fine. And then create pull request. a lot of steps to do basically one thing. I'm sure any minute it will work. There we go. And then in terms of submitting assignments, you're done. And then, you know, from the PT Bravo Platoon repo, you'll be able to see this pull request, right, that came from someone else. So there's a lot of steps there, but we'll be going through this process many, many times. So it will become second nature.
Hey, Chet, can you go back to that last part because you froze and it was kind of like you were telling us something and then it's
Oh.
stopped.
You froze for like a solid 10 seconds, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry. Okay, so where did I lose you? So did you guys see me make the pull request?
I think you were about to write a comment in the pull request.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's optional. You can write a comment or not. And then all you do is click submit pull request. So all you're doing is submitting a pull request, but you have to click like 5 buttons in order to do that.
So that pull request is asking like P2 Bravo, will you please pull my code that I am offering you?
Yeah, so the way we're using it in it's a little bit different. If this were an open source project and you made a pull request, you would be saying, hey, open source project, I fixed your code for you. You should now include what I did in your code. So that's basically what
Because
a pull
you
request
wouldn't want to just be able to like spit code at something. They have to accept it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one more question about backing up a little bit to when you're cloning something from GitHub, you can clone something from your own repo too. And then the second part of that was when you clone it, then you just skip the whole Git Init step if you were going to make your own from scratch on your own local machine.
Yeah, so if you're starting from scratch, then you would have to do Git Init. But if you're pulling down a Git repo, then you should not do Git Init.
Yeah, do not do Git Init if you're cloning a repo down. Do not use Git Init. I've seen a student do that in the last cohort. They did that and they wonder why they couldn't like push their code up because it reset to initial state. They didn't have a remote to push to. So yeah, they just reset all their stuff basically to initial state. Anyway,
Pat, how do we get to that project right there in the curriculum?
Yeah, so from here, so every day there will be a README. So this is for Tuesday. This is today's. There's lecture topics. We talked about VS Code, Unix commands, and Git.
Okay, so right there. Okay.
And then the challenges, which we'll have challenges basically every day.
Okay.
Here's one of them. I just clicked on that.
Okay. Okay.
so you can navigate all of the assignments from the very beginning of the curriculum page. You should be able to like, where chat is at right now on the screen. This is the main curriculum repo. And it says you're going to start from module 1. So you're going to start at module 1 and breaks it down into your weeks that you're on, whatever week you're on. We're on week 1 still. And then it's broken down by day in there. So you should be able to find, if you look at today's date, you should be able to find what day we're on. And then you'll have assignments in there. And then those you'll usually like fork. You will always fork your assignment first, most of the times, and then clone it down from your own copy. If you try to clone it down from where you would fork from, you're not going to be able to do a push. It's not going to let you. You can only push to your own repo because you only have permissions in your own repo. You do not have permissions in
we're not going to give you
Platoon's
guys
repos. You don't have organizational access to Code Platoon's repo, so you cannot push the PT Bravo platoon. That's why you need a fork.
Okay. So a lot to take in. There's a lot of steps, and Git is very weird and confusing. So, but again, you don't need to really understand everything. You just need to do it a few times, and you'll be fine. So with that, I will say, take the next, let's do 40. Yeah, let's go till 8. Yeah, let's go till 8:40. So take about half an hour and try to do this first challenge, which is basically what I just did. So you'll start, you'll go to today's README. You'll go to the Git Poetry challenge. You can read it, read the directions, but the workflow is going to be, you're going to fork it first. You're going to fork it. You're going to get your own local copy. Then you're going to clone it. Then you're going to make your changes. Then you're going to do add and then commit. Then you're going to push up. And then you're going to submit a pull request. So it's all going to be very confusing. So feel free to ask each other for help. So, look stuff up, try to figure it out. And also, I'll also mention on the main curriculum page, there's a brief overview of that workflow, which you may find helpful. But so you can look at this, you can ask each other for help, you can look stuff up online. And if you try those things and don't have any luck, then you can also ask. You can ask me and you can ask Chris. So you guys should definitely ask for help, but you should also go through the process of, trying to figure it out on your own, trying to ask each other, and then asking us.
Struggling is where you're going to learn the most.